back for another episode of Inside.net. Today, I have with me somebody who has a very interesting project to demonstrate, one that I get a lot of questions on, called Avalonia UI. And here today to present Avalonia UI is Mike James.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. We love to talk about interesting technologies and different ways to do the same thing. I think the main thing that this stream is about is getting to the inside parts of .NET, the parts where Microsoft doesn't tell you about, the things that are really cool that may not be Microsoft prescribed. Like, we want to highlight those things and show people that there are people in the .NET space doing amazing things, and you can plug into them. And get value out of it. So why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown? Who are you? What is Avalonia?
Yeah, so I'm Mike James. My title is CEO, but it's a very grandiose title. We're a small team, so we're a very flat hierarchy. Anyone and everyone will come and tell me I'm being an idiot. So ignore the title. So my background, I've been a cross-platform developer for years. Like, since leaving university, I started with Qt, so building C++ applications back when it was Qt4. I skipped out on QML, but I ended up doing mobile development at that time. I was doing JavaScript with JQ Touch, I think the library was.
It was Sencha Touch was the library. There was a Sencha Touch. Yeah, it was Sencha Touch because we used it probably like 2008 timeframe for an app. Yep.
Yeah. So I was in the weeds with that, and I tell you, I hated it. I hated every moment of it.
Yes.
And that's purely because I'm a horrible developer. Like, really a terrible developer. And I think that's in part because I learned with VB.NET. And so, like, the .NET way of working is the way that my brain works. When I think about code, for me, it needs to be type safe. Give me JavaScript and I'll make it work. But
no
Lord help anyone that Lord help anyone that needs to add a feature or work out what I was thinking. And if I come back to it a week later, no idea.
Yeah.
So I was building all these applications. And this was for an architectural lighting control company. So the idea was that you could have an iPad and you could stand in front of your football stadium and you could control the lights on the exterior. Or the London Eye was one that we did a lot of testing on. So you could stand at the bottom of the London Eye, this huge wheel, and change the colors. And it was a great experience for the user, but a horrible experience for me as a developer.
Right.
And I went home one weekend and I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I was searching on Google for .NET on iOS, and Xamarin popped up.
Nice.
This was like 2012.
Yep.
So Xamarin had been around for like a year maximum.
Yep.
It was really early days. And there was no free trial. There was just like, give us $200 and you can use it. And I just received a credit card. Like, it was my first ever credit card, and it was the first purchase I put on it. I was like, I'll take a gamble, but I'll buy the license and I'll see how I get on. And over the course of the weekend, I'd hacked together this proof of concept, it was using monotouch.dialogues, which was amazing, like the precursor to Xamarin Forms, which is the precursor to Maui. And yeah, I built this native application in C# that I enjoyed the development experience. And yeah, the app was better. Dev experience was better. I just fell in love with the tech. And ultimately, I left my job at Pharos doing the lighting control stuff and started working at Xamarin. And I worked all the way through to the acquisition and then spent seven and a bit years at Microsoft. So I've kind of done my time in the big corporate beast.
Yep.
But cross-platform has always been kind of the itch that I've been looking to scratch. Like, it's the problem that I don't think has really been solved, in my opinion, by anyone. Xamarin got close. Like, I really loved the Xamarin technology, and I still think it's excellent, like what we've got with .NET, iOS, and .NET, Android. And to a degree, what's happening with Maui, I think it's great to see. but I used to use WPF all the time, and to be able to visualize and then create almost anything, that power is like it's unrivaled, really. There
Yeah.
isn't anything, or there hasn't been anything that
Nothing.
could reach that level of customization. So yeah, I'm working at Microsoft and I'm doing various jobs there, kind of bouncing around, not really finding a home, I would say. I think on reflection, I'm probably not cut out to be in a corporate machine like that. Because, overnight we went from a company of 500 at Xamarin to a company of over 100,000.
Yeah.
So that's like a huge culture shock.
Yes, it is.
There's no amount of onboarding that can prepare you for that. And especially
No.
when it's not a decision you've made, you've not applied to work for Microsoft, it's just happened.
Right.
So, yeah, it was, I genuinely loved the time that I spent there, but I never really found my home. And I bounced around different teams and ended up on the Cloud Advocate team. And whilst I was there, one of the projects I was working on was I was rekindling a university project, which was build a lighting controller. So when you go to the concert and you see all the lights moving around, and there's typically a person at a machine with loads of sliders, a load of buttons, and an array of touchscreens. And it's like those systems haven't changed since the 80s.
Right.
I've got like the original one in a flight case over there. It's great technology, but it's basically spreadsheets.
Right.
Spreadsheets with faders. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I've kind of spent far too long of my life trying to create something intuitive. A slight digression, the most intuitive lighting control is just a light switch, but you can't really scale that to an entertainment. I mean, on, off, it just works.
On, off.
Yeah. So I took this WPF project that I'd wrote at university. It was horrifically developed because it was not only me as a terrible developer, but me like 10, 15 years ago. So really, really bad code. But it worked. But it was stuck on Windows. And the landscape had like hugely changed because back when I was building that, Windows 7 was brand new.
Yep.
So there was still an embedded story. Like to run on Windows Embedded was still a thing, or Windows XP Embedded. And I was revitalizing this project, and I was thinking, if I actually make this a success, where am I going to run this, and how am I going to run it on these machines? Like everything's moving to Linux, and I cannot run my WPF app on Linux.
Right.
So I was like investigating Windows Embedded. I was digging through what's publicly available and what's privately available on the Microsoft internal SharePoint, and I just couldn't make sense of it. I couldn't understand. Could I buy a Windows Embedded license? Was it now IoT? But there's IoT Core, and there's like another version of IoT that allows you to have a shell and a desktop, and it's based on Windows 10. But there's certain things it can and can't do. And I was just like,
too much.
Yeah, too much. If I couldn't work it out with the internal documents, what chance does anybody else have?
Right.
So I was like, I have to migrate from WPF to something. I was like, I've done Qt before. I'll just do it in C++. But I've done Qt4, which was all widgets, and now it's QML. So like that world had changed, and I was like, this is not my home. I do not feel comfortable here. And so I'm doing what I always do when I hit a problem, and I Google for what I want. So before it was, iOS with .NET, but this time it was WPF Linux.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the results was Avalonia.
Nice.
So I was like, what is this thing? And like the marketing was terrible. Like it was every bit of like publicly available information was so clearly made by a developer it hurt.
Yeah.
Like the technology, incredible, but the messaging around it, the positioning of it was just it needed some love.
Right.
And I was like, I'm gonna give this a try. So I created a live stream and I went on YouTube and I was like, I'm gonna start porting some of my UI controls. And one of the UI controls is a color wheel color picker.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was like, I'll pick that one. It's a pretty easy control. It'll probably be like an afternoon of working out how to do a port. And I went online on YouTube and I started broadcasting, and loads of people appeared in the chat from the Avalonia team.
Yeah.
And so they were basically coding it for me, but through YouTube comments.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
we got it. Yeah, we got it working. And my mind was kind of blown. I was like, this is incredible. I can actually take all of that knowledge that I have of WPF and how that works, and a lot of my code, like there was some differences, but it wasn't a huge amount.
Right.
And yeah, it will now run on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. I was like, this is pretty incredible. So the guys kept pushing me, Mike, come and join the core chat, be more involved. And I was like, you're all way too smart for me. Like you don't need me.
Right.
Like,
Right.
You guys are onto a good thing. Just crack on with what you're doing. And yeah, they were persistent. And sometimes there would be things where I'd ping them and I'd be like, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And slowly over time, my involvement with the project has kind of snowballed to the point that they've put me in a position of power. So I think that's testament to either their craziness or maybe they did need some help with the more business side of things and the marketing parts. But yeah, so that's a very, very long-winded explanation of who I am.
That's a great explanation. That's a great explanation.
So we kind of covered there what Avalonia is broadly, in that I found it through coming from that WPF perspective.
Right.
So to give some kind of background, it's an open source project that's been around for a decade. Mm-hmm. So it was created by a guy called Stephen Kirk. I always want to call him Captain Kirk. But
I would, because I have a horrible sense.
Yeah, I mean, but he's had his entire life hearing that, so I don't want to be that guy. But here I am telling people on a stream, But he's a genius. He used to work at GitHub. After the acquisition, he left GitHub and he lives a couple of hours down the road here in Italy. But yeah, he created Avalonia and back then it was called Perspex, but it's always been open source.
Okay.
And the idea was to create a WPF v2. So how can we improve on WPF?
Interesting.
The initial version. Yeah, because Microsoft had a really good thing. WPF is an excellent UI framework. There is no question of it. And there are 600,000 actively developed WPF apps out there in the wild. So actively developed means that it's being built at least twice a month. These are mission critical applications for enterprises. Now, yeah, and it's growing year on year. So the really surprising thing is that if you take the WPF numbers and times them by 2, you're basically looking at WinForm numbers. Mm-hmm. So there's still more WinForms developers out there, but there's still an awful lot of WPF developers and businesses that have bet big on WPF, and they don't have a migration story that is really acceptable.
Right.
So if you look at what's happening, like at the Build conference and the material that comes out of Redmond, the recommendation is typically build it as a web app, move to Blazor.
Right.
And that makes perfect sense for some use cases because it's cross-platform by design. But there's an awful lot of applications that isn't possible for.
It's not the correct answer for.
Yeah.
It's not the correct answer for the application itself. Yeah.
Exactly that. And so the other alternative historically has been, we'll move to UWP. That's also not the right answer.
Nope.
And now we've got WinUI 3, and that is also not the right answer because we're talking about a serious rewrite of your application, and you're still tying it to a Windows only platform. I mean, you could use Uno and get it cross-platform, but fundamentally, it's still a Windows only solution. The other option is to try and go to Maui. Well, Maui is huge respect for the team building Maui, but it's fantastic for mobile. I think it's a good strategy for mobile. I think it falters on desktop. I think the news that they're building a WPF backend and the stuff that came out of Redmond around the MVP summit and the status of Win UI. I think that I'm hearing rumors that don't sound positive around that future, so I can see why they're hedging their bets to go with WPF. I think Maui is always going to be a little bit underpowered for desktop, given its heritage with mobile. It's a lot easier to take a desktop app and shrink it down to mobile than it is to go the other way.
Yes. Yeah, I found that same thing.
So yeah, there's all these enterprises with WPF apps and no migration, reasonable migration strategy or modernization strategy.
There you go.
So that's kind of where Avalonia fits in. So we've got this decade of engineering into a stable, performant, cross-platform UI technology that enables you to take your existing skills, code, and tools and target all of the platforms that matter. So we've got Mac OS, we've got Linux, obviously have Windows. We can go all the way back to Windows 7 if you wanted to.
Okay.
Why you would, but some people do. Some people do.
Yeah.
So we've also, with V11, which we released the RC for just last week, we're adding iOS, Android, and WebAssembly. So you can target all of these platforms from this one code base. So it's pretty compelling for a lot of businesses. We've seen a huge surge in interest. And it's kind of correlated with, we've started to get involved with the marketing side of things.
Nice.
So as I've kind of got involved with the project, kind of get our branding sorted, understand who we are and what we're trying to achieve, really focus on that and get the message out there so that people know about us. Because we're like the best kept secret in the .NET community.
Yes, I can attest to that. So you actually have some information to share with us around that best kept secret. Why don't we go ahead and get into that?
Yeah, I'll got some slides and some demos and stuff so we can.
Yeah, let's get to the meat and the potatoes. Show us why Avalonia UI is the best kept secret in the .NET space.
Let me. Perfect. So hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yep.
I spent far too long messing around with animations earlier, so I apologize if this gives you motion sickness. But so we are an overnight success based on a decade of hard work. And I kind of say that tongue in cheek. It is that decade of hard work that has allowed us to be successful today. But it's kind of been built in stealth mode. Most people, as I say, haven't heard of us. We were at an event in Porto last year, and the number one question was, who are you? I've never heard of you before. Are you like Xamarin? And it's like, well, we're kind of a little bit like it, but not really. Let us explain. But what we really are is an open source, cross-platform UI framework for .NET.
Right.
And as I mentioned, we can target Windows, Mac OS, Linux, iOS, Android, and WebAssembly all from a single .NET standard library. So you write your code once and you run it across all of these different platforms. Now, that isn't to say that you should use 100% of your code across all of the platforms. You know, taking a high fidelity desktop application and running it on an iPhone is going to deliver a horrible user experience for your end user. You could do that if you wanted to. I just wouldn't recommend it. But what you can do is you can reuse all of your view models, all of your business logic, and then tweak that UI. So you can reuse the UI controls and most of the XAML, but just tweak maybe the theme or the size of the controls in order to make that a decent experience on the mobile platforms. And the web is basically a desktop at this point. But yeah, single project, multiple platforms. That's kind of the magic. And we've been developed, say, 10 years at this point by hundreds of contributors from all over the globe. So it's really it's a community-led project. It started as open source. It wasn't built by some huge corporation and open source later, which is how most successful open source projects are created. They're in-house and then given out to the world as a gift. This is a grassroots movement. So our community, that they love the technology and they're very vocal advocates for us. So if you find someone in the community that's using Avalonia, that they'll probably chew your ear off with how much they love it, which is great to see.
Yes, they have.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great from my perspective, actually, because they're out there advocating for us, and we want as many community advocates as possible. And we've seen a huge amount of growth. It's steady and slow, so we're the red line here. Blue line is Xamarin Forms, and then the yellow line is .NET MAUI. Now, it's not surprising that .NET MAUI is slightly above us there on the GitHub stars. It's had the huge might of the Microsoft marketing machine just churning away and making sure that everyone knows about MAUI. But we're slowly catching up.
That's an interesting point, though, yeah, because like the whole thing is MAUI has the Microsoft marketing engine behind it, and you're neck and neck, in my opinion, based on these numbers, right there with them with minimal marketing and just developer word of mouth. So imagine what happens when we get some marketing behind this amazing treasure. Yeah.
Totally. So I think in total, we've probably spent about $2,000 on marketing in 23 and $0 in the other, 9 years that the project has existed. I think the word of mouth marketing is more valuable than a Google ad or a LinkedIn ad or a Twitter ad. And yeah, I think there's a lot of companies and developers as well that they want a Microsoft first solution for everything, and they go there first. And so what we find is that a lot of users come to Avalonia having tried MAUI, because that's the prescribed from Microsoft technology for building cross-platform apps. They don't have a delightful experience with it, depending on what they're building. And then they come to us and they give us a try, and they're surprised. They're surprised at how stable it is, how performant it is, and what they're able to achieve. And we're not silver bullet. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're perfect. We've got many things that we want to improve, and that MAUI does better than us, and all the other competitors do better than us. But we provide a really solid platform to build on, and we're solving genuine problems for lots of businesses. And there's a huge amount of value in that. So yeah, we joined the .NET Foundation.
Nice.
We're the most active project within the .NET Foundation, which is, I think, incredible. So
that is.
If you look at commits, pull requests, I think we might also be issues as well. But I mean, that's just a sign people are using us.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, any contribution to the project, issues, pull requests, getting on the GitHub's discussions and asking or answering questions, it's all appreciated because it helps grow the community. These kind of technologies, they live or die by the community that they exist within and the broader ecosystem. So yeah, we're seeing a huge amount of growth, and we're expecting with V11 for this curve to continue its upward trend.
Good.
So let's talk about architecture and how do we work? Why are we different? So this is a diagram that I updated a couple of weeks ago for V11. The magic is really over here in this green section. So it's the windowing platform. We don't use native controls. So like MAUI, you're asking for a button. On iOS, you get a UI button.
Right.
On Mac, it used to be an NS button, but I guess with Catalyst, it's probably still a UI button.
Yeah.
But if you're on Android, with Android, you would get an Android widget .button. You're getting the native control. So that has pros and that has cons. One of the cons is that you're building an abstraction API rather than building a UI toolkit. So it's a slightly different way of attacking a similar problem. The only native thing we need is the window. So on Windows, we use Win32. So we create a window using Win32 APIs, and then we put a canvas inside of that, and then we push everything all the pixels to display your user interface to that array of pixels in the canvas. So there's two approaches to that: direct 2D or Skier. Most users are using Skier. So we have the Skier canvas and everything is drawn in that. On Mac OS, we used to use MonoMac, and then we tried Xamarin Mac, but the performance wasn't particularly good. So we created our own approach to binding to those APIs, those native APIs. We call it microcom. But it's the same thing. We create a window, a native window, and then inside of that, we have a canvas, and then our rendering technology, this iRenderer platform, does all the work of taking your app and pushing pixels to that canvas. Linux has two approaches. If you're desktop, it's going to be X11. If you're embedded, we've got DRM, KMS, and VBDev, which effectively means that we're able to run on just the Linux kernel. So you can, I mean, if you take Ubuntu, for example, that's quite a, I don't want to say bloated OS or distro, but it's got a lot going on. There's a full desktop environment. If you want to run on low-powered embedded devices, you want your Linux install to be as minimal as possible. And we enable that with Avalonia by having very few dependencies in order to get running. So the lowest powered device I've seen us run on is a 500 megahertz IMX5 board, which is 32-bit ARM processor. So yeah, 500 megahertz. It's got like half a gig of RAM, and I think not even a gig of storage. It's a really low-powered device. The processor was released in 2005, so we're talking old hardware, but we still run performant, and animations occur smoothly, and the apps are still rock solid, and customers are happy. So we've seen a lot of customers using Avalonia for embedded devices and industrial devices. And iOS and Android, we use what used to be called Xamarin. It's now Net iOS and Net Android. I'll show you on the next slide something very interesting on the Android side, because we don't actually depend on Mono or Xamarin anymore. We have a solution to remove those dependencies.
Nice.
And then lastly, we have WASM, headless, which is just for testing, VNC support, and then an IDE previewer. So that's like this is the magic of what are we displaying in, and this is the magic of how do we display. But as a developer, you're only really using this bit, and it's Net Standard 2.0 or Net 6 in terms of the target framework. So it's cross-platform, just like .NET is. So it's a minimal architecture, which enables us to support the broadest range of platforms without a huge amount of work. If, let's imagine a company like Apple brought out a new device that was like a new paradigm for computing. Like maybe you would wear it on your face or something like that. We would be able to support that if you can imagine such a future. And it wouldn't be terribly difficult for us to support such a device.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Not that I'm definitely not announcing anything.
No announcements here. So just good talk.
Yeah, just kind of spitballing, talking hypotheticals. So yeah, we can support a whole range of platforms. So I was mentioning about the Android side of things. We're experimenting with dropping our dependency on Net Android. That's because performance is really important for mobile, and Android has always been I don't want to say it's bad performance, because it's okay, it's good, but there's a lot of room for improvement, and we think that we can provide a solution that can go kind of toe to toe with technologies outside of the .NET ecosystem. So we typically look at Flutter and Qt as our inspiration for where we need to be.
Yes.
I'm gonna click this link. Let me drag the window over. I'll restart this video. The first one is native AOT. So this is like our magic. Just look how fast that app is launching.
Wow.
Blink and you'll miss it.
Wow. That's it, and that's an Android app. This is an actual part. This isn't
Yeah.
like sped up or anything.
No, this is real time. You can watch the clock.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I've spun up a lot of apps in my life as a mobile app developer, and I can tell you that sitting there waiting for it to spin up is the most grueling part of the process. This is
Yeah.
amazingly, yeah. So and it's funny that you bring that up, right? Like you talk about Avalonia was WPF first, right? And and you talk about the fact that from WPF first, you were trying to find a way to run a WPF app across multiple platforms, which is different than how Xamarin approached it, right? But what you're
Yep.
doing is you're converging in the same space because what real developers want is the ability to write their application once and never have to worry about it across any target that they want. Web, mobile, desktop, what car, new eyewear devices, whatever you may have, wrist watches, whatever the case may be, right? You want a framework that's going to let you write this code and get it there. And Android has always been a performance hog from my experience writing cross-platform applications. So the fact that you've got such an amazing startup time and you're finding ways to continually push the performance boundary is something that a developer like myself cares about because I'm getting asked the tough questions. Hey, Rodney, how do we make this more performant? How do we use less memory? How do we do these difficult things, not just deliver an app, right? So this
Yep.
shows me that you're caring about not just your user's experience, but the developer's experience being able to satisfy the customer's concerns, which is a very important portion of running a framework, listening to your consumers.
Yeah. So I totally agree. I totally agree. I think so. On the point of performance, mobile, as you say, is so important. Um, Mono Droid, which is now Xamarin Android, which is now Net Android. There are just from the way it's designed, there are some inherent performance bottlenecks. By removing that dependency, we can kind of skip over it. And I think it marks an interesting kind of change in the way that we operate as a company, because there's a company behind Avalonia UI now, and
Mhm.
it's that we're quite happy to, if and when we need to, we will go toe to toe with what Microsoft are providing. If we think we can deliver a better experience than what we're getting out of Redmond, we'll go and do that. We're not just going to take what's available from Redmond, because if they're not making the tech that we need, we'll just go and do that. And
Nice.
that's what we've done here. Now, I want to be clear, this is not a silver bullet. You can see the instant launch speed. There are drawbacks to this approach, and we will be working those out in order to make this, usable for everybody in every type of application. But yeah, this was Nikita, our resident genius. He spent a day to get this technique working. So if you can imagine, this is him doing a day's work, what he can achieve in a couple of months.
Jeez,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I love Nikita. As I say, he's an absolute genius.
that's amazing.
Um, so some example applications, as I say, we're focused on mobile for V11, and Linux is kind of the bread and butter for businesses. We've recently been working with Wilderness Labs, who I don't know if you're familiar with, but they create they're microcontrollers, so you can run full .NET using Mono on a microcontroller.
Okay,
So it's lower than your Pi. It's really low level
right,
electronics, but it's still a full .NET stack. So you're not having to use C like you would with an Arduino or something like that.
right. Okay,
Absolutely incredible technology. And as part of that, they've created a kind of platform called Meadow, and we're working with them to have Avalonia as the go-to solution for your human machine interface devices, so your HMIs. So you can keep your full .NET stack, and you can build your embedded electronics and go all the way up to a screen, so that people can tap buttons or see graphs and things like that. So
nice.
that's pretty exciting.
That's nice.
And the thing that I love about Avalonia is the ability to control the look. So this looks to me like typical Fluent application, you would think, yeah, that's built with the official Fluent SDK. Nope, that's just an Avalonia app that's been styled well. So there's no native control in there other than the window. Everything else within it is drawn, in this case, by Skier, using the Skier renderer, but it's just an Avalonia app. And then another application, so if you want more of an Android look, you can pick a different theme, and then you've got the material design. So you can totally customize every pixel of your application and create whatever kind of UI that you would like. So the ecosystem is growing. I mentioned Wilderness Labs, but there's also third parties that are in the process of building UI controls or have built and shipping UI controls. We have a great relationship with JetBrains. So we use JetBrains Rider as our day-to-day IDE, and one of their team members has built the extension so that we've got a previewer, but we've got IntelliSense and XAML completion built in with the standard Rider and ReSharper, and that's been provided by JetBrains because they're using Avalonia.
So you're telling me I can go into my JetBrains plugins right now and go get an Avalonia plugin? There's a plugin. Oh, I'm about to do this right now. I'm about to go do this right now. Yeah, Avalonia.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, because like it plugs into my toolkit. Like there's a previewer, which is, I'll be honest, as a mobile developer, like the previewer is the #1 thing that really changes the development experience.
Yep. So the previewer, you mentioned before on a previous slide where I was showing like all the different screens. The previewer is actually an instance of your app running, and then we kind of remote those pixels into the IDE, so that you get, as you're changing the XAML, you instantly see how your application is going to look running on device. And it works with all the data bindings and all of that goodness. So it's a good experience for development. And yeah, it's lovingly maintained by an engineer at JetBrains. And then the IDE, even without the extension, has really good support for Avalonia in general. We also have, for the people that like Visual Studio, we have an extension that has the same previewer. I'll be honest, the XAML completion isn't as good on Visual Studio, but that's just because we've rolled that ourselves. Creating IntelliSense and a language server is it's a dark art, and people do PhDs in it, and it was kind of an afterthought for us. So we are going to improve that, but it's on our long shopping list of things to do. In the meantime, if you struggle with it, go and try Rider, because that XAML completion has been developed by experts, and it just works.
It does. Yeah, their XAML completion is actually pretty interesting. Ooh.
Yeah.
This is the slide I wanted to see. It's demo time.
I mean, I talk for ages, don't I? I never shut up.
It's okay.
So I've just got some random projects that I was looking at earlier. In fact, let's be brave. New project. So we have some templates here. You can grab the templates from the getting started. We have a cross-platform template, which will give you everything: desktop, mobile, web. We have just without MVVM. So if you want to do code behind, then you can do that. So more like the WinForm style. But I like MVVM. That's how I think in terms of code.
So, I'm going to ask the faux pas question. Is there any MVU support coming for Avalonia?
Do you know what? Everyone's talking to me about MVU at the moment. And one of the things I keep saying is I don't think that .NET developers really understand what MVU is.
They don't. They don't.
Because everything I've seen is just extensions. It's just like you've created an extension method. So you're creating the visual hierarchy through extension methods. But the whole point of MVU is that you need a DOM, so that when stuff changes, you can update that and you can do the diffing. And there's nothing I've seen actually does that. So I was talking to a guy this week. He wanted us to pay him to create an MVU framework for Avalonia. I talked around, will it have DOM support? How are you dealing with updates? And it's it's clever what he's built, there's no question, but it is just a lot of extension methods. So I don't think C# is the right language for MVU. I think that there's
Really? Ooh.
F# is better for it.
Oh,
I think if you want to
completely.
go, yeah, and if you want MVU and Avalonia, there's a couple of projects that you can use already that are in the community. Funk UI,
Okay.
that is MVU, yeah. So Alex asked a question: is Funk UI real MVU? Yes, it is. It has the DOM, and it's with F#. So if you want MVU, I would recommend go F#. You can still build with Avalonia and get all of the goodness. So that's kind of my hot take for the day, hopefully for the day.
Okay.
So we have our project. It's just an MVVM project. I think if we pop into the view model base, we're going to see, look at this. This is kind of your wheelhouse, RX.
Yeah, I know that object pretty well.
Yeah, so the default templates comes with RX. We also support Community Toolkit. It's super easy to change if you want to. We're not bound to any particular MVVM framework. So let's.
Yeah, to that point, I have seen Avalonia projects that use Prism, reactive UI, both at the same time. So I've seen at minimum that much.
Yep.
In my travels.
Let's see if the preview is going to play ball. There we go.
Oh, that is snazzy.
Let's change some properties. Let's do font size equals 50. Font weight equals bold. Let's background color. Let's go really hideous, shall we? Oh yeah. This is looking snazzy. Foreground, we'll do white. And yeah, we can see that it's bound here to the greeting, which is coming from the view model. We can command click that and get to it, because the development experience in Rider is just so lovely when you're building with Avalonia. And we can now just run that. We don't really need to run it because we know what it's going to look like already from the previewer.
But the question I have is, by default, okay, so by default it's a desktop application, which makes sense because it's WPF, right?
Right. So with this project, when I was doing the new solution, I had the option of cross-platform, and that would give me. Let's do this. Hello, cross-platform.
Oh man, I'm getting two brand new samples live. I'm spoiled today. Browser. Oh, yeah. That's the one.
Yeah, browser. So we have WASM support. So let's make those same changes that we saw before. So we'll go to our main view. Let's change. I like my demo to look like this. What was it?
So
font size 50. Font size 50.
That's because you also do C# UI. That's why.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't. But
I find that people that like their code styled this way are very particular about certain aspects of code. So when I find people that like their XAML style this way, I know I have somebody that I can have a real conversation with. Like, oh yeah, you get it.
Yeah, but you know, if you take a method and you put all of the parameters on new lines, I will hate you forever. Like for me, I like my methods to just be long. I'd rather keep scrolling till the end of time.
The only reason why I have gone away from that is from pull request reviews. Having to scroll like that when you're doing the diff side by side in a web UI is very, very aggravating. That's the only reason why I advocate for chop line. But
yeah, I mean, I can deal with it. It's not my favorite. If I see someone's putting some code that's, you know, across all the different lines, I won't go and change it, or I might, but I won't commit that change. I'll leave it. So here we go. We're going to run this. Now this is a debug version. There we go. Welcome to Avalonia. We're running in the browser.
Right there in the browser. Just out of the box.
That's not even the most exciting demo. So
he says.
Yeah, let me I think I wanted that window. Here we go. Let me drag this over. Demos. So let's do solitaire.
This is live. Oh wow. And for the record, this is the same demo we just saw on that Android uh, tap, right? Where we were looking at the
Yep,
time change. So now we're seeing an app that we've already seen on Android being done in a web UI.
exactly that. And in fact, let's find the project for this. We'll pop back up here, Solitaire. Let's open the, where's the solution? There it is. So just like you saw, we've got the different projects. Let's take the browser, sorry, the desktop, and see the same code running on the desktop. Once that's loading, I'll try and continue to win. Oh, there we go. It was too fast for me.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
It is. I like performance.
Man, you said a lot there, my friend. I've learned recently that performance in .NET is more of an art than a science.
For sure. So yeah, that's one example, but we also have, oh, we don't need ChatGPT. Crikey, what are we doing? Here we go, demos. We also have a full XAML playground. So this is full .NET 7. I think we might have updated it to .NET 8 because we support .NET 8, all the previews, that's just work. One of our competitors will do like a huge announcement and blog posts to celebrate running on .NET 8, and we're all sat there like, yeah, of course it works on .NET 8. Well, why wouldn't it work on .NET 8?
Just change the 7 to an 8. Everything works, right?
Exactly that. It's like, it's not a big deal. Just change the 8. Change the number. Increment. It's easy. So this is like a full. This is based on Avalon Edit, but it's called Avalonia Edit. But it's a fork that now runs on Avalonia, and we can pick our samples, and it's all. Let's see, what's the drawing one? That's pretty hideous. Tab controls. There we go, and we can edit the code here as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, so I'm a little slow. So help me understand. Am I looking at an actual XAML runtime playground in a web WYSIWYG style editor?
Yeah, but it's not WYSIWYG. You're not drag and dropping. But so we have XAML here. We can change some of this. I don't have IntelliSense here, so it's going to be just trusting that I know what I'm typing. There we go. Now it's red, and then we'll do foreground equals white. That's going to go white, and let's do height equals 150. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So we now have our button, and when we click it, it's incrementing because the code here is saying it's counting one. So let's change that to you clicked me, and now when I click it, you clicked me. So it's a live XAML playground. You can write XAML, you can write C#. So it's like full .NET runtime and all of Avalonia running in the browser. And it wasn't built as a browser app. It was built as a desktop app, and then we just published it to the web because it's the same code. It just works.
It's the same code. It just works. Yeah, that's great. So okay, so I'm like legitimately blown away because like I knew what I thought Avalonia was before we started talking today, and I've had conversations with some folks around Avalonia, but like this has given me a much better understanding where Avalonia could legitimately be my UI toolkit for my .NET application running on whatever target I see fit. And you have that working today.
Yeah, that works. It's taken us 10 years to get here.
I respect the journey. Don't get me wrong, but I'm here and I'm now, and here and now I have cross-platform needs, and it sounds like Avalonia is one of the better tools out there to give me the leg up in the C# space.
Yep, I think that for desktop development, there isn't anything that comes close to what we're doing. We are in a league of our own. So this is my lighting controller app. This is the thing that I've been like working on forever. I got this running earlier. There's some bugs with it. You can see my workspaces aren't quite right, but yeah, it's everything is styled. Lots of custom controls.
Yeah,
nice little animations.
Yeah, this is so. I am not a a form person. You give me a UI and some specs, I can make it happen, right? But like you want me to come up with a great visual display, I'm not so great at it. But it like so I always love UI toolkits that come styled for me out of the box. Right. And you even brought it up
Yep.
earlier that I can change it from, I saw Cupertino in one of the things. So like I can change it to whatever UI styling I want. Like I can get some level of pretty baked into my application just by creating one of these Avalonia templates and slamming F5, right? And if I want to
Yep.
change it to something slightly different, I change it. And if I want to change like a color here or a color there, it seems like I'm basically empowered as the developer with a template that isn't just a white page with hello world, and more so it's a pre-styled application UI template that I can
Exactly
swap the
that.
theme.
So the default theme that most people are using today will be the Fluent theme. So
Makes sense.
I'll pull up the control catalog so you can see that.
Yeah.
So this is, again, it's running on across every device that we support. I haven't built this in a while, so it might take a while. It's saying
No
some
worries.
errors that could be because of that reactive UI. I think it just needs to restore.
Yep,
I
probably.
know. I'll blame you forevermore.
Yep, it's okay. A lot of people do, and I accept it. You know,
Sometimes it just needs to run a restore to get it to play ball.
Usually.
But yeah, so we ship the Fluent theme, and so most apps look like Windows apps, but it's super easy to customize everything. Well, this build is taking a while.
Ricardo Griffith says very impressive. Yeah, I agree. This is pretty impressive. For anyone that's like been on that journey in the .NET space for like, let's call it the past 15 years of, mobile and desktop and cross-platform, I can honestly say that this looks like one of the better approaches that I've seen. Because going in my mind back to your architecture diagram, you're not trying to, like you said, I'm not trying to create a facade around some interface to make sure that I can bolt in some other platform's concerns. You're legitimately saying, hey, we give you a couple of extension points. You can give us the window and you can give us your rendering, and everything else we'll just handle. And that's a very different approach to a lot of the other things I've seen in the .NET space. And I like it because it's lightweight and it only really forces you, the developer, to care about things that you actually care about. You only care about a frame, the viewport that you're looking at, and what's on it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a super lightweight approach, vastly different to how Xamarin Forms or Xamarin worked. This is much more like how Flutter works.
Yes.
So we're using the same rendering technology. They've created a new one that they'll be moving to. We may move to that as well. But right now we're using Skier. But the renderer underneath is like totally irrelevant to us. And we can change it. So we're on Fluent at the moment. Full, there's also compact version. Let's change, we're on light, let's change to dark. There we go. Now we're on the Fluent dark theme.
That was,
and these are all the just built-in controls.
That happened fast.
I mean, yeah, this is I can't stress this enough. Avalonia is incredibly performant. So we were doing a rendering test. The Maui team created this lols per second test. I don't know if you've seen it. It was for, I think they were doing it for Android, where they print lols, multicolored lols onto their view as many times as they can.
Yep.
They were getting about 1,200 lols per second. Like if we're generous, we'll say they got 2,000 lols per second. We then ran it on our new compositional renderer, which is what we're seeing here. It was just shy of 4 million lols per second. So we're able to, we're just on a different league when it comes to performance.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all the same code that you would run across all of the platforms. It's all your WPF knowledge coming across to these new platforms.
So, wow. So, okay. So I'm going to ask the questions from the mobile developer perspective while we're waiting for this to continue to build, right?
It's built. It's done.
Oh, is it done? I still see red.
Yeah,
okay. I see it's running, but like the IDE just didn't catch up. Okay. Yeah, okay, that's what we were just looking at was the control standalone. Okay, there we go. My brain hurts.
Exactly that. Yeah. So hit me with the mobile questions.
Well, the mobile question is simple, right? Okay, and I'll approach it like a potential customer. Well, you've got this WPF platform that you've ported to Linux, and that's great, but we have mobile specific concerns. iOS is very particular, and Android is its own finicky beast by itself. How can you at Avalonia really give us an experience that's going to work for our cross-platform iOS and Android application, given you're a WPF first approach? Right? Like that's the question
Well,
you're going to
so
get.
yeah, we're WPF inspired, so we're not just a one-to-one clone of the API, and we've never tried to be that because we wanted to make our own changes. But I think the question of when I joined Xamarin, I think your experience with Xamarin, you'll probably be able to testify to this. Back in 2013, native mobile apps, it was like the thing. The web apps that we were building with Sensor Touch, they were okay, but they weren't really okay. Customers weren't delighted by what we were delivering to them.
No, they were not.
Right. So, we moved to Xamarin and native because it was what was needed at the time.
Yep.
I don't think that the landscape is the same. I think things have moved on. I think that mobile is most of the apps I use are web apps on my phone, or they're Flutter apps. So like the Philip Hue app, that's a Flutter app. My banking app is definitely a website masquerading as a native application.
Yep.
But the experience of it, from my perspective, is fine. It works well. It's performant. It looks good. And it means that I'm getting features much faster than if it was built with the native technology, because they'd have to reinvent the wheel for every platform.
Right.
So I think if we had a time machine and we went back to 2013, the argument of, it's not a native application, or how do I make sure that it looks perfect and as expected, I think that would be valid then. I don't think it's right today. I think today you can ship really high quality experiences with technologies like Avalonia and Flutter and React and web technologies. And the bar has moved. The ecosystem and the landscape has changed. I think that there's no real need to force yourself into native only.
I think I completely agree with that. And I like the fact that you're looking outside of the .NET space for inspiration. Like you're telling me that, without any remorse, you're looking at Flutter and seeing what is Flutter doing, right? Because I honestly think that there's a lot of things that Flutter does well, right? Right. So, and it's funny because Clancy was working on that Comet project, which was supposed to be the bridge that .NET developers were going to get that was going to give us this Flutter-like technology, and it's not gone anywhere recently. Towards it hasn't gone anywhere towards me being able to use it in a production application. Let's say that. So it seems like
Clancy's now at Facebook.
Yes, yeah, he's working on some of the augmented reality stuff. He's
right.
Great. He's a good developer. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting because I find that we as .NET developers are always give us what Microsoft tells us is the right way to do things, but those of us on the fringes or in the weeds, in the middle of the stuff, we're always trying to find how are other people doing this and how are they being successful at it, and let's bring that into our ecosystem and let's make it work. So I really, really do appreciate that you are willing to look anywhere for the inspiration to make a phenomenal product. That's a very important thing.
Yeah, I think we can be quite insular in the .NET community, and as you say, look just entirely to Microsoft. But my professional career was I wanted to use .NET, but I was happy to pay for Xamarin. I was happy to put my money where my mouth was and invest in that technology, not only on my credit card, but also in my career. And I've never felt that I need to rely entirely on Redmond. I think, Flutter's doing a fantastic job on mobile. It's not perfect. I've heard lots of criticisms around state management not being ideal, but that's a difficult problem to solve. But yeah, there's lots of stuff, lots of inspiration that we can take from Flutter, and I occasionally get messages from Tim Sneath, I think his name is. He's just left the Flutter team, but he's like very
Okay.
senior there, and he would message me very very lovely messages, encouraging us and saying that what we're doing is fantastic, and he's excited to see how we progress. That's always lovely to see. But yeah, Flutter on the mobile side is brilliant. I think on the embedded side, we look at Qt and what they're doing, because they're obviously number one.
Nice.
So yeah, we're not solely insular in our gaze when we look at technologies.
That's good. We got a question from the viewers. They ask, what would be a good starting point for newcomers to Avalonia and XAML documentation courses? So we linked the getting started earlier, and we'll link that again here shortly, which I think is just looking at it earlier, it looks like a great resource. But are there other resources that you can provide?
Yeah, so I think right now you probably want to go to v11.docs.avaloniaui.net. So the official documentation will take you just to docs. That'll take you here. If you end up with a dark banner, you're in a good place, but you're not in the best place. The best place would be to come to V11. And if you're an absolute noob, this will help you get started with the fundamentals of.
Let me share your screen so that way people can see what you're showing. There we go.
There we go. So yeah, v11.docs.avaloniaui.net. And there's stuff in here around teaching you the basics of MVVM and data binding and converters. And it's more, we hired a guy to write our documentation that has no experience with WPF or Avalonia. His experience is MVC. So he was asking all of the excellent questions that it's intuitive for us because we've done it for a decade.
Right.
So this is a much better starting place. We'll be combining the two, and we're building a whole new portal. But secondly to that, just go to GitHub, and we've got sample projects here. So we've got the Solitaire one you just saw, or you're seeing private ones as well that will come public soon. What else have we got in here? I've been working with one of our guys, Jumar, to create some like quick guides, standalone little projects that show you how to do random things. We'll be publishing this soon. So like how to do drag and drop operations, using Google Fonts in your app, clipboard, native menus, AOT, localization, all of the things that most people are going to want to know how to do, but they don't want to sit through like a 40-minute YouTube video.
Right.
Just come here, grab the code, and it's like laser focused on one thing.
Right.
So that you can just cut out the BS and get straight to the point.
Nice.
So yeah, I would say come to our GitHub, check out our docs here, and also go onto YouTube. There's a load of, I think it's Angel 6. Yeah, this guy here has created a whole load of, he's playing in my ears, load of Avalonia content.
Nice.
And he walks you through building some pretty cool apps. So definitely check out what he's been doing.
I'm gonna check. Yeah, I'm gonna check him out.
That's where I would get started.
Nice. Awesome.
And then I also wanted to show you. I wanted to show you something really cool.
Yeah,
so
sure.
we kind of talked about the open source project and say we're community focused. We've been community led for a decade, but we've had a huge amount of businesses wanting to build with Avalonia, and they want support and development services. And so we created a company a couple of years ago called Avalonia UI OU, registered in Europe, in Estonia. And it's from the core contributors of the project. And the idea is to help these businesses build with Avalonia, but also to make the project sustainable. So we've hired the core team, and they're working on it full time now. Nice. And we're profitable. We're making healthy amounts of money doing this. So I think we're a success case for open source.
Nice.
But we spent an awful lot of time writing or porting WPF apps because it makes sense. We're so similar that people want to migrate to us. But I'll be honest, we don't want to grow old porting WPF apps. That is not what we're about. So we don't want to do it forever. The customer has to spend a lot of money to do it, and it takes a lot of time for these hugely complex apps. So we created something called Avalonia XPF. So we forked WPF, and we enable WPF applications to run on Mac OS and Linux today, and we'll be adding iOS, Android, and WebAssembly next year. And we're also going to be adding Vision OS, so you'll be able to run this on your new Apple headset.
On my glasses.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the trick to it is we've replaced the low levels. So we've got this mil core, which is like the core part of WPF. We've ripped that out and we've replaced it with Avalonia. So the standard Avalonia that you've just seen, and 10 years of work. And we've left presentation framework and presentation core untouched. So that means your application sits up here with basically no code changes. We can now run your app on these new platforms. Now, most applications reach down into this low level. They're typically using GDI with some WinForms APIs. So in the process of this, we're creating a cross-platform WinForms. We're not ready to really talk about that properly or sell it as a separate solution, but it is there, and it's there to enable WPF apps that have dependencies on WinForms to run on new platforms. I'd really love to show you some examples of this.
Yeah, I'd like to see this.
And this is like full-on magic, in my opinion. The fact that the guys have made this happen is just incredible.
Looks like magic to me. I mean, you tell me you're gonna no code changes. I mean, I'm a developer. You tell me no code changes. I don't believe it.
Well, I'll really drive the point home. So this is our XAML. It's all standard WPF XAML. The only changes to this project that occurred are in the CS proj. So we update the project SDK. This has a dependency on WinForms, so we provide those shims, and that's the only change that's been made. And now this app will run on my Mac. There we go. So it's not quite as pretty as the other one, but that's because this is like a 15-year-old demo.
How pretty it is less. I'm sorry. The beauty in it to me is not the UI. It's the fact that you are running a WPF app on a Mac OS device. That is the beautiful thing to me in this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let me show you something more interesting. So where it gets fun is Telerik. So almost every customer we've spoken to is using Telerik. I don't know, it's unreal how many people are using it. So we needed to create a test project. So this is just a standard WPF application. If we drop into the CS proj, you can see I'm taking this dependency from NuGet. This is the official Telerik NuGet. There's no changes occurring there. This thing was only made to work on Windows. So we have to provide some Win API shims and the WinForms API shims, because a lot of these controls are actually just WinForms. We update the project SDK, and now if I hit build, we can run Telerik UI controls on Mac and also Linux. Now, my favorite thing is to try and make this crash. And you may be wondering, why would I want to make this crash? Because I want to show that this is real. This is a work in progress. It's private, early preview at the moment. We go some more charts. I thought that might be a crash for a moment.
No.
We've got barcodes. What else have we got? Outlook bar, is that going to crash? No, that's working. Come on, something crash. Not often that.
Normally demos are people praying that it doesn't crash, and here you are trying to force it to crash.
Oh, this doesn't work properly. So look at this.
Oh,
this is something we're working on. There you go. So transforms with like 3D transforms need some work, but this is a really early version of XPF as well. It's not even named properly. It's still UPF. So we weren't even sure what we were going to call it. So like this is months old.
Which is funny because we just got that question. Why is the SDK called UPF when the project is called XPF? It's because it's early alpha code. That's why.
We have changed it, and if I'd have to go onto NuGet and check what the latest build is, but yeah, it is changed. It's just this is an early version, and when your demo works to a point, it's like, yeah, I'll keep it. But yeah, so this is Telerik. I've still not crashed it. This is something I know will crash it. Will the calendar crash? No. The webcam, that'll definitely crash it. Let's do it. There we go. So the webcam control doesn't work yet, but it's a work in progress.
There we go.
But just to show you that this is genuinely magic, let's pop over to GitHub. So this is not my project. I don't know who this person is. I just was searching for. I wanted a Minesweeper that was built with WPF, and that's what this is. So let's download the zip. Let's open the solution.
Alex is asking,
we'll trust it.
Is the XPF bits, are they available publicly, or is that private only for right now?
That is private only because we're commercializing this. So this is going to be a paid product, which goes towards helping us grow the team so that we can invest in Avalonia UI. So all of the money that we're making is being reinvested into the open source project. So this is kind of aimed at the large enterprises that are stuck with WPF and they don't want to spend 2 years rewriting in anything. We give them this solution. So we can see that it's quite rightly complaining because it's like, well, WPF doesn't exist here.
No,
so let's
WPF.
drop into the CS proj. I'm just going to copy and paste the project SDK. Let's replace that.
Oh, I see. You are explicitly using your own SDK.
Exactly that. Now, we don't need to use WPF because we're not using use WPF. I'm going to save that. Do I need to do a restore? Let's just do it just in case. .NET restore.
Yeah.
We're all up to date. Okay, let's hit run.
Can you do me a favor and go back to the app.gee whiz?
Oh. Oh, damn. But yeah, so there we go. We've got now WPF app straight from GitHub. I've not even looked at the code, to be honest, but it works.
It works.
Yeah, and there's no changes here. This is
and that's what I wanted to see. So just by changing the SDK, we have made it such that everything in the project just magically resolves.
Yep. So this is why we're charging companies for it, because this is genuinely magic.
Yeah.
This is going to save businesses a huge amount of time and effort.
Yeah.
It de-risks the entire process. They can target, by this time next year, they'll be able to put this on the web. They'll be able to run it on the mobile devices, probably tablets more than phones. But if they want to run it on a phone, they can run it on a phone. And with the WebAssembly support, we're going to make it so you can put it in Teams as well. So if you've got an internal line of business application that's been stuck on Windows and half your employees are using Mac or Linux or whatever, well, now we can take that application and put it in Teams so that it's in the chat application that your enterprise is using for everything. So we are super excited about the future with XPF. But that's it for demos. I'm all done showing you the magic of XPF.
So we have somebody else saying, so unicorns are real. I was told that what you just showed me is impossible, right? I've been told that by folks that work for Microsoft. Like, no, we won't do this, right? And what I think I love about the story and the conversation that we've had so far is all of these amazing things you've shown me have grown from pain points. You said earlier, we don't want to port WPF applications. We don't want to grow old doing that. We want to go work on new, amazing stuff. Let's find a way to make that problem go away. And so what I love about everything that you've shown me today and everything we've talked about is everything has been created from the attempt to solve a problem that real developers are having and real businesses are facing. And that's an amazing thing when you are able to provide a solution that just works. That's pure magic, and it saves people and businesses money, time, headaches. That's a developer that doesn't have to go crazy, that, having to make deadlines of having to have this app ported by June 31st. Like none of that matters. Yes, I know June 31st doesn't exist, but like these gotta, you're now giving me the ability as a regular Joe developer to save my entire business with minimal effort. And that's something that even, again, Microsoft isn't trying to solve that problem. They aren't trying to solve that problem for their consumers. But here's Avalonia UI saying, you know what? We feel the pain and we are going to solve it. That's a, man, great. Fantastic. I can't wait to start playing with it. So someone asked out here, Maui or Avalonia for new projects. I have done a lot of looking and I cannot go on record as saying either, but I can say this. I am now considering Avalonia as a candidate in that conversation. It is now, in my opinion, just as valid as a cross-platform technology as Maui or Flutter or anything else that I have sampled, just from this hour and 15 minutes that we've been talking. Mike, amazing presentation. Like I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed our conversation. I enjoyed you showing me what grew from real problems. And yeah, this has been a great time for me.
I appreciate it. I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to come and show. As I said right at the beginning, we're the best kept secret in .NET. Just people don't know about us.
So again, I knew it was a cross-platform technology. I didn't know, I didn't know all the bells and the whistles. And you're right. Like, and I consider myself in the know. And I know people that use Avalonia, and they've told me, Rodney, it's great. You got to try it. And I'm like, I don't. But now, I mean, I'm gonna go download the .NET templates. I'm gonna play around with it next week while I'm hanging out, and I'm gonna see if I don't move some of my current projects to Avalonia and see how it washes, because what do I have to lose? Worst case, I find the most amazing technology that I never knew existed, right?
Yeah. Well, if you have any issues, just drop me an email, and we'll make sure that you're looked after.
Sure thing. Sure. Well, I'm sure there's a Discord channel or a Slack channel somewhere, some media. So I'll likely join. If I have any problems, I will come in and start being the squeaky wheel. Hey, how do I do these things?
So that's perfect, because it means that is like the funnel for our documentation. So all of those questions helps us build out the docs.
Yeah. And that's another well-kept secret, is that if you're a consumer of an open source library, the best way, in my opinion, that a regular developer can contribute is to ask questions, and ask questions in a way that forces us to ask, are our documentation sufficient in this area? And if it's not, it gives us the opportunity and the ammunition to bolster it. So, I'm going to ask questions. I've got a buddy who was asking me questions last night about Avalonia, and now I'm going to go back and have a conversation with him and his team and his shop. And I'm like, hey, yeah, you should go watch this live stream and go use it.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, Mike, it has been a great time. I am actually remiss that we have to stop, because I have so many more questions personally. We may have to bring you back and answer some of these questions in another 6 months. That Avalonia or Maui question is one that I personally am going to come back to. And I'm probably going to bug you about it. And I'm going to be like, hey, why don't you come talk about it? Because we're actually going to be doing a show up here soon with Alan Ritchie, where he's going to show us how to migrate from Xamarin to Maui. So maybe we do some, converting from Xamarin to Avalonia type conversations to give people an understanding of how easy it may or may not be, and maybe put it in contention for the next UI framework in the .NET space.
Love it.
All right, Mike, this has been another episode of Inside.NET. Thank you, everybody, for watching and coming and joining us. Mike, thank you for coming and presenting this amazing technology.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, have a great day.